And good afternoon. This is the Wells Report News Special. I'm John David Wells. The president is about to speak. He's going to talk to us about the day of the wars that have passed. This is day 4 of the Israel-Hamas war. He's going to speak to us from Washington, D.C. His remarks are scheduled for 1 p.m. this afternoon, a few minutes from right now. He has not been speaking with the American people or virtually anyone else for the last 3 days, and he plans to join us. There was a statement put out yesterday, and the president talked about 11 Americans being killed and some Americans indeed being taken hostage and are very likely in the Gaza Strip as we come to this report. The statement said, quote, "We are seeing the immense scale and reach of this tragedy. In this moment of heartbreak, the American people stand shoulder to shoulder with the Israelis. We remember the pain of being attacked by terrorists at home, and Americans across the country stand united against these evil acts that have once more claimed innocent American lives, not to mention Israeli lives." And in fact, the statement did not mention that. He moved on in this statement to say that it was an outrage. NBC News reported the Biden administration sent ships from the USS Gerald R. Ford Task Group to the eastern Mediterranean Sea in support of Israel. The effort is also meant to serve as a clear message to Iran to stand down. This, according to a U.S. official. The U.S. plans to keep F-16s, A-10s, F-15s, F-18s, and F-35s in place to be used if necessary. President Biden also said in his statement he reaffirmed to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the U.S. would continue to make sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself and its people. This is something that is incredibly important. As you may understand, the Iron Dome system is a system that was put together by Israel and the United States to protect Israel from rocket attacks very similar to the ones that we have seen. Those were a little bit more primitive than the rockets we have seen, with less range, etc. These are unguided missiles, but they do fly very, very well. When we say they're unguided, in other words, there is not a place for the missile that is designated for it to land. In other words, it is being fired in a free fall trajectory. But what's interesting about these missiles is that they fly very, very straight, which are a vast difference from the Katyusha rockets that we saw years and years ago being fired out of the Gaza Strip, etc., and into Israel. So as we watch all this unfold, we are waiting for the president to speak. It has not been talked about what he is going to say. We may be able to see what's going on. Let's see. It appears as though this was the president a while back. I just went back to take a look at this, and indeed that was an older statement that I just brought up here. But the president did speak on Saturday morning, and that was the last time we saw him. He was in the company of Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Now, what's interesting, at least as far as I'm concerned on some of this, has to do with the fact that the president is someone who, and the Secretary of State has mentioned, that there is no direct tie between the Hamas attacks and Iran. This kind of flies in the face of what we have been seeing regarding certain coverage about this. Indeed, a meeting of the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps in Beirut, Lebanon, that indeed was held with Hamas terrorists in the Gaza Strip, that talked about going forward with this particular attack. It seems fascinating to me that there is no direct linkage, even though the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps was certainly involved in this. This has been widely reported. Hamas authorities have stood up and thanked Iran for their support on this particular mission. And it does appear that Hamas is very, very serious about turning this into a all or nothing affair. It appears as though that Hamas is all in on this. Clearly, Israel is going to handle this particular war a bit differently. They have been called incursions in the past, but this is a full-on war as declared by not just Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but also declared by the Israeli Security Committee that makes such decisions. And so this is a war, and it is about to be prosecuted with ground forces as they are arrayed outside of the Gaza Strip at this particular moment and are preparing to move into the Gaza Strip and find people who are there, if they are still there, or and remove whatever Hamas terrorists might be in place after all of that. Now, we are some 30 seconds into the point where the president was scheduled to begin remarks. We can show you what they are giving us at this particular moment, and we're expecting the president to join us as we spend a bit of time getting ready for this eventuality as we bring you the very latest as to what's going on. This was something that we determined to be very important to you, and so we have jumped into some live coverage of this. We will join the president when we have a moment. Or when he appears. CNN has been doing a great job in covering the minute-to-minute coverage. These updates have been incredibly good, and we want to thank them very much for sharing them with us today. 1 minute ago, it's 8 p.m. in Tel Aviv. Here is what you need to know. Fighting between Israel and Hamas is continuing for the fourth day since the Islamist militant group, Hamas, carried out one of the deadliest terror attacks in Israel's history, killing at least 900 people. Israel has responded with an overwhelming number of airstrikes on Gaza, a 140-square-mile densely populated territory controlled by Hamas. They've left at least 830 people dead there, wounding 4,250, displacing more than 137,000 people. What's interesting about Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip is that they don't go without being warned first. In other words, these displaced people, some 137,000, are warned that the building that they're about to, that the building they're living in is about to cease to exist. They do that by sending an unarmed rocket into the building itself. It costs somewhere along $15,000 for one of these unarmed rockets that will land directly in place. And since it's unarmed, there is no explosive involved in it. That gives you an opportunity to get out of the building because they normally do this 45 minutes before the attack. Something tells me it's somewhat shorter, somewhere around 15 minutes. You've got 15 minutes to get out of that building or you're going to be a part of a destroyed target. So that's what they do. So these displaced people, I don't know where they're going. Very likely they're going through the very last way out, which is on the south end of the Gaza Strip, to get out of that particular area and move into Egypt. So we're talking a little bit more about this update. Israel has attacked Gaza area. Israel carrying out strikes at the Gaza port, according to the Israeli Defense Forces. IDF is currently striking terror targets belonging to the Hamas terrorist organization on the coast of the Gaza Strip. Details to follow, it said. A fishing boat has been pictured. You might have seen that ablaze at the port. Hamas has attacked Israel. A huge barrage of rockets were fired from Gaza by Hamas on Ashkelon in response to the displacement of civilians in Gaza. This was followed. The actual attack was followed. Harbinged or warned about with a warning issued to the residents of the southern Israeli city to leave the city before 5 p.m. local time. A video shared by Hamas showed rockets flying through the sky with people taking cover on the side of the road in Israel. The only crossing available to fleeing Gazans has been struck. The only border crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt, I was talking about this, was struck by Israeli warplanes today. This according to a spokesman for the Palestinian Interior Ministry, Ayed al-Bazam. The tightly controlled Rafah crossing is the only crossing available to Gazans looking to flee as Israeli attacks Gaza in response to Hamas attacks on Saturday. Now, keep something in mind here. The hostages that have been held by Hamas may have also been sent through that particular Rafah crossing into Egypt. So there may not be any hostages left in the Gaza Strip proper. They may be indeed in some other area. Let's see. Eddie Jones is talking about the buffering of this video. The audio ought to be pretty smooth, Eddie. The video has some chop in it, and that has nothing to do with us. That is strictly because of Chrome, and we have not been able to get that taken care of to our liking at this point. Let's see, Yvonne, by the way, on the chat room. You can join us on the chat on Facebook, YouTube, X, Twitch, and Rumble, and Patreon. Yvonne says the sad thing for the people is Hamas won't let them leave. So they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. We talked about this earlier on the Wells Report. We talked about the fact that indeed there is a lively debate that has occurred since the beginning of the Cold War regarding what are called innocent civilians. If you live in the Gaza Strip, and the Gaza Strip is widely reported as being controlled by Hamas, are you indeed an innocent civilian? You are allowing these people to live amongst you. They are indeed committing war crimes, undeclared war with rockets, weapons of actual war, being sent into civilian populous centers in Israel without any kind of actual declaration. There is no societal law covering what Hamas has done from the Gaza Strip into Israel ever. So these are war crimes. Now, the thing about it is that if you're living in that neighborhood, are you somebody that will say, oh, I don't know, just say, I really don't have anything to do with this, but I just happen to live next door to some terrorists who fire rockets into Israel? The obvious answer on that is no, you are a participant, and therefore you are a legitimate target. And American generals have said so, and they have acted on those assertions. And so we watch all this and say, okay, Hamas has decided to go into Israel and slaughter anybody they found. Those they did not slaughter, they raped and took hostage. Those are the reports coming from that region. The Hamas leadership says that this has happened because of decades of what they consider Israel's oppression of their people. Well, okay, but I haven't really heard too much about Israeli troops moving into Gaza Strip and essentially just slaughtering anybody they found. As a matter of fact, I've never heard about any of that. The response that I've seen from Israel in the Gaza Strip and elsewhere have been exactly that, responses and nothing more. We are waiting for the President of the United States. He was indeed scheduled to begin his comments approximately 8 minutes ago exactly. We are waiting for the President to speak, and we will get to that speech as soon as he comes on. This is the Wells Report News Special. The President speaks on the Israel-Hamas war. So rockets have been fired from Lebanon toward Israel. Rockets fired from South Lebanon toward Israel, according to Al-Manar, a Lebanese news outlet that is owned by Hezbollah. Hezbollah has not claimed that it has fired those rockets. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, responded with artillery fire because the kind of war that would be fought with Hezbollah, which is a much more serious military organization, also nurtured and trained and indeed nourished with weapons and so on by Iran, the response that Israel would have in southern Lebanon is somewhat different. We talked a little bit about how Israel would handle southern Lebanon. They would essentially take off all the gloves and pretense, and they would go to actual war with Hezbollah, and Hezbollah knows it. So there may be from time to time these rocket attacks just to say, well, we're Hezbollah and we're serious about this. Okay, yeah, well, we'll see you when you come over the frontier and get slaughtered by the IDF. There are foreigners that are among the dead that were in the area of the Hezbollah attacks. At least 9 Latin Americans, Peruvian, Brazilian, Argentinian, are all dead. 25 are missing following the attacks by Hamas on Israel this weekend, according to their respective governments. Other foreign nationals reported dead included citizens of France, Russia, and Thailand. The United States is not urging Israel to exercise restraint. Indeed, there was a very ill-advised statement by the Secretary of State after the slaughter of some 900 Israelis and others to stand down and to cease fire. That tweet, or excuse me, that X post, was immediately taken down by the Department of State. It was ill-advised. There is no reason for Benjamin Netanyahu or Israel to stand down in any way, shape, or form. I would suspect, as we discussed earlier on the Wells Report, that indeed what would end up happening would be that the Israeli military would go into the Gaza Strip and lay waste to it. I can't see that there's any other reason to do so. Many people are saying, well, there needs to be a two-state solution. That came most recently from Vladimir Putin, the premier of Russia. Well, the thing about that is that the Palestinians have rejected all of that out of hand. They've been given a chance to have their own homeland 4 separate times. But what this proves, beyond any argument, at least in my mind, is that Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, is interested in slaughtering Jews and taking over Israel completely. Why they would think they could pull that off, I have no idea, but they certainly have gone all in on this. It's reminiscent to what was something that happened with the United States. We were engaged in a war in Vietnam, and it had become America's first television war. In other words, we were getting daily reports from the Vietnam War on our home television screens every single day. And in 1968, there was something called the Tet Offensive. This was put on by the North Vietnamese Army and a group of people that very much are like Hamas, a citizens militia, if you will, called the Viet Cong. The Tet Offensive was something that caused the entire Viet Cong force to be obliterated. They were literally obliterated during the Tet Offensive. But that wasn't anything that was reported. Indeed, many of us believe that the reporting of the Tet Offensive was the birth of fake news. That being said, the Viet Cong ceased to exist. That is what I would expect to see with regards to Hamas. Hamas is going to cease to exist here. Israel is going to find anybody responsible for Hamas activity and slaughter them. It's very difficult to work up any kind of reason why they shouldn't, insofar as what we've seen Hamas do in the last several days, this being day 4. So the United States not urging restraint. In a phone call with President Joe Biden, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu brought up the possibility of going into Gaza. President Biden did not warn him against doing so. U.S. official briefed on the conversation reported that to CNN. When President Biden delivers his second speech on the situation in moments, we expected him at high noon. He has not made the show yet, but we are waiting as we are working to make sure that we cover that speech for you this afternoon. He will continue to hold back from urging Netanyahu to exercise restraint, according to officials familiar with the remarks that are about to be delivered. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit more about this. There was, I think, there was a live update, and we're working on it. Let's see here. Let's see. Live, the Hamas war, and that is not going on yet. Watch CNN live. Let's see what CNN is doing. No, we can't get there from here. Okay. So anyway, let's go through some of the most recent reporting. This from 25 minutes ago. Women, children, and the elderly were brutally butchered in southern Israel, according to the Israeli Defense Force. Hamas militants carried out a massacre in Kfar Aza, this in southern Israel, during their attacks over the weekend. Women, children, toddlers, and the elderly were brutally butchered in an ISIS way of action, according to the Israeli Defense Forces speaking to CNN. The IDF cannot confirm the number of people killed there, would not go into details on how those people were killed. The IDF was responding to a report by the news outlet I-24. Some of the troops who had arrived at Kfar Aza found terrible atrocities had been committed against the victims. Earlier today, an Israeli general described to CNN the moment the military found the bodies at Kfar Aza, that which is a kibbutz. I've never seen anything like this in my career, never in 40 years of service. It is something I had never imagined. So we were just discussing how Israel knocks on the buildings that they are about to destroy. And the Israel Defense Forces have seemingly stopped that particular tactic. The euphemism describes a military tactic first developed in 2009 and used in several conflicts since then. IDF forces will alert a building's occupants that they are targeting the structure for an airstrike by dropping a small, non-explosive munition on the roof before a larger strike is executed. Its objective is to minimize civilian casualties by allowing evacuations in buildings where the militant groups keep rockets or ammunition. Despite the ultimate goal of saving lives, the technique is controversial, has been criticized by human rights groups who argue that dropping a munition on a building should not be considered a warning. Okay. Once again, I have real problems with this. I really do. You have a choice. You can either drop a rocket or a bomb on the building without warning, destroying the building, as we've seen on video, destroying the building completely and everybody that happens to be inside it. Or what we can do is we can knock on the building's roof and say, hey, we're about to take out this building. Why these human rights groups would have a problem with that? Boy, I really don't have any understanding of that. Maybe you can explain it to me. You can give me a call, by the way, if you'd like, 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. This, by the way, is a special news special from the Wells Report. It is something that we are bringing you because we were expecting the President of the United States to speak almost 20 minutes ago, and he will have remarks regarding the attacks on Israel by Hamas and the war that has ensued. We are waiting for that. Getting back to our coverage here. This, by the way, CNN live updates. We want to thank them again very much for all the things that they are giving us here. Others say, even with a heads up, there are very few safe places for civilians to go in a blockaded strip of land. Gaza is small, 140 square miles, about twice the size of Washington, D.C. It's one of the most densely populated places on the planet. Civilians, including children, are often killed in the bombardments. IDF spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht explained that the distinction between military and civilian targets was not so simple. In buildings where people are living could be a weapons store. It could be a Hamas kingpin lives there. Well, what is happening right now following Hamas's attack? Israel seems to have abandoned the knock on the roof. CNN has spoken to multiple people in Gaza who say they were given no notice when their homes were bombed. When asked whether the IDF had stopped the tactic, Hecht said on Monday that Hamas did not knock on the roof. When they came in and threw grenades at our ambulances, they did not knock on the roof. This is war. The scale is different. The absence of such warnings may be contributing to the significant number of civilian casualties reported so far in Gaza. At least 830 people have been killed in Gaza since Saturday. Many people who are expecting to hear something of some sort of moral equivalence, I believe, should stand down. The people of Israel that have been killed by Hamas were killed on purpose. The people that have been killed by the IDF response, the Israeli response in the Gaza Strip, are being killed by accident. There is a sincere difference here. Let's see. Let me get to the one new update if I can. This, once again, is live up to the second, or up to the minute at least, coverage from Israel. This from 13 minutes ago. CNN's Celine Al-Khaldi is reporting that homes, schools, medical institutions, and government buildings have been flattened in Gaza as Israeli airstrikes continue today. This according to the Palestinian Ministry of Information. Here's a breakdown what was provided by the Palestinian Ministry. Fully destroyed 168 buildings, including 1,009 residential units. partially destroyed. 12,630 residential units partially destroyed. Medical institutions, 10 bombed, including 7 hospitals. Ambulances, 12 ambulances have been directly targeted. 48 schools have been destroyed. 23 government buildings, if there is such a thing, in the Gaza Strip, they have been destroyed. 5 medical personnel, 7 journalists have been killed, and displaced people in Gaza are now taking shelter in 70 centers due to continued airstrikes. Okay, so that is essentially the very latest that has popped up, courtesy of CNN. About an hour and 16 minutes ago, the Israeli Defense Forces were engaged in a firefight with Hamas militants near the kibbutz Melfasim, make that Methelsim. That was Tuesday evening local time. A CNN team heard numerous exchanges of machine gun fire while positioned near a group of IDF troops holding a perimeter about a kilometer, 0.6 miles or so, away from the battle. At one point, CNN heard gunfire coming from a different direction. Troops indicated there were numerous firefights with Hamas happening in the area. An IDF spokesperson could not immediately confirm an official version of those events. A little more than an hour ago, children of a 66-year-old U.S. citizen say they heard her screaming on the phone before she went missing in Israel. Before Adrienne Netta went missing from kibbutz Berai on Saturday, assumed kidnapped by Hamas attackers, she was on the phone with her children, who were trying to calm the 66-year-old as she heard gunfire outside her home. This according to her eldest son, Nahar Netta, reporting to reporters Tuesday at a news conference held by families of U.S. citizens missing in Israel. Quote, both my brother and my sister were on a call with her as the terrorist barged into her home. We heard a little bit of screaming, and that was our last contact with her, unquote. According to Nahar, he has not been contacted by the Israeli government. Zero communication from the Israeli government. Zero communication on our side. I can appreciate the total mayhem and mess that the combat environment is creating, but I think that after 3 days, more than 3 days now, it's more than a reasonable request to have somebody from the Israeli government or the U.S. administration approach us with any type of information that they may have on our family members. Adrienne was born and raised in California, according to Nahar, adding the U.S. government has a responsibility for every life of every U.S. citizen that's out there to bring each home safe and sound. Diana Netta, Adrienne's youngest child, praised her mother, described her as an exceptional human being who spent most of her adult life working as a nurse and midwife. When she walked into a delivery room, she saw a human being in front of her, not a religion, not a race. The family once calculated that Adrienne had brought thousands of lives into this world. Soon, U.S. President Joe Biden will address the fighting between Israel and Hamas that has continued for the 4th straight day since the Islamist militant group carried out their deadliest terror attack in Israel's history. 900 people are dead in Israel, according to the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. Tel Aviv has responded with an overwhelming number of airstrikes on Gaza, the 140 square mile densely populated territory controlled by Hamas. Those attacks leaving 830 people dead there, displacing more than 137,000. This will be the second time President Biden will address the situation. Sources familiar with his prepared remarks say he will not urge Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu or Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to exercise restraint. I don't see that would be a wise move either, and we will see just exactly how all of this works or what have you as soon as the president comes back to join us, which he has not done so far. So once again, we are waiting for the president to join this particular broadcast as we decided to go live today at just before high noon to be able to cover this president's speech to the American people. So far, once again, we have this slide being supplied by the White House. That is what they have for us. And with any luck at all, I will snap my fingers and say, go, and the president will start talking. Go. Okay, no, that's not going to work. Let's see. Dana Lesh says the dirty thing needs flushing. I agree. Let's see. I'm looking at the chat room, and I don't see anything except what we are all doing, which is waiting for the President of the United States to come to the microphone and start speaking with us. There have been a lot of people talking about what the United States response should be on this. We are hoping that the president will say some of the following things. First, the $6 billion the president decided to release to Iran, that will be refrozen. We are hoping the president will say that. I don't know that he will. We also hope that the president evokes something of the Kennedy Doctrine that would be something along the line of, if indeed an American held hostage is harmed, the United States will hold Iran directly responsible. That would be, I think, a very good point. And the president needs to look directly into the camera, straightforwardly, and say those words and mean them. I hope President Biden can indeed do that. As far as the rest of this goes, there are a lot of people that are pretty sure the president will continue to pledge whatever resources Israel would need in this war. And it is a war, not some kind of smaller incursion or anything of the kind. No, this is an actual war. This is what it actually looks like. When an opposing force comes into your country and starts slaughtering people on the street, it is very serious. Yes, we were talking about that today. We were talking about how the White House, the State Department, and indeed the French State Department have not come out and said this is Iran's doing, even though the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps is responsible for all the training, according to Hamas themselves, responsible for all the training of Hamas terrorists to go into Israel and do what they've done. Okay? Even though that has been said, no one is willing to come out and say, including the United States government, that Iran is responsible. Well, we were discussing that if it quacks like a duck, and it swims like a duck, and it flies like a duck, it's a duck. And I'm pretty sure that in this particular context, Iran is the duck of which we speak. And it seems to me that it is time for Iran to be held accountable for some of the horrific garbage that they have indeed foisted on others, and that being Israel. It seems very likely that what is happening is that Iran is very much interested in removing Israel from the face of the earth. They have said this time and time again. They are in pursuit of nuclear weapons for the sake of that particular stated mission, which is to remove Israel. Now, I don't know exactly when the German willingness to slaughter the Jews in 1938 or in the late 30s and the 40s. I don't know exactly when that began, but I will tell you this. This nation, I'm talking about Iran, and other people in the Middle East who have come out and said, we are here to obliterate the Jews, they have been essentially given a pass. You know, they hung Nazi authorities as war criminals for this. And if indeed Hamas is responsible, and they are responsible, I'm sorry, if Iran is responsible for Hamas action, then it seems to me that the leadership of the Islamic Republic of Iran might be facing a gallows after a Nuremberg trial at some point. That's what I would expect. But then again, this idea that the entire world refused to allow these non-state actors to be treated as state actors when they indeed formed themselves into some kind of a fighting force and actually attacked a nation. The fact that the Geneva Conventions were not updated at that point has led us to this situation where a particular nation state can convince a group of people like, say, for example, Hamas, to form themselves into a fighting force. They've done the same thing with Hezbollah in Lebanon. They have formed themselves into a fighting force, and yet can indeed designate an enemy and that designated enemy can be attacked by these proxy armies. And yet, the nation state responsible not being held as such, that is a hole in world law. Now, I know for a fact that the World Court in The Hague is essentially a useless body with really cool robes that the justices wear. I can say that indeed that is a world court. Why they haven't actually decided to start ruling on some of these things, opting instead to hold, I don't know, United States military personnel as war criminals, I don't really have any idea. But what I would like to see is an update of the Geneva Conventions to cover this very thing, indeed holding the nations responsible. As we were discussing earlier, it's my hope the President of the United States evokes some responsibility on Iran and takes actions to stop Iran from continuing this particular course of action. You know, the latest I heard, by the way, when it comes to Iran developing their nuclear weapon is that they had moved to the point where they had weapons-grade uranium that had been refined to that level. Why is that significant? Well, in point of fact, weapons-grade uranium was the actual explosive used in the Hiroshima bomb. That bomb they were absolutely sure it was going to work, so much so they didn't even bother testing it. It was called the Little Boy bomb. They put it together. They put it on a B-29 bomber. They flew it over Hiroshima and creamed the place. Now, that was only about 15 kilotons, but it wiped out the city of Hiroshima. The question is, do the Iranians have that weapon now? Something tells me they do. I believe that Iran is nuclear capable, which is why they are acting in the way that they are acting. And it is extremely concerning to me. It absolutely is. We are waiting for President Biden to address the nation. This address was supposedly to take place at high noon today. The White House has yet to turn the feed on. I am watching this. They have a feed called The White House Live, and it's actually pretty good. They actually do a pretty good job on this, but then again, they don't necessarily put the president out there until they're absolutely good and ready, and regardless of when they say that something is going to happen, regardless of that time, you really don't exactly know when that's going to happen because they are not on a strict timetable. So there are new reports from CNN. Let me give you some of that information. This from 1 minute ago. At least 1,000 people have been killed in Hamas attacks on Israel. This according to Israel's Army Radio. At least 1,000 people have been killed following the Hamas attacks on Israel over the weekend, according to Israel's Army Radio reporting today. Army Radio is operated by the Israeli Defense Force. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris just concluded a call. This is 5 minutes ago, and perhaps is one of the reasons why the speech is late. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris just concluded a call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss our support for Israel. This marks the third call that President Biden has held with Netanyahu since the conflict erupted on Saturday. The White House plans to share a readout of the call shortly. President Biden is expected to deliver remarks on the conflict from the state dining room imminently, although those remarks have been delayed, as we know, because we've been waiting. So the state dining room is where the president will indeed be having this speech, apparently sharing the idea or saving the idea of an Oval Office address for something that might be more important. So let's see. As of 8 minutes ago, Germany is going to expand departure options out of Israel as a group of students returns home safely. German authorities are working with airlines to expand departure options for German nationals trying to leave Israel, according to the German Foreign Office. This in a statement today, advising those seeking to return home to Germany look for flights on less well-known airlines or flights traveling through third countries. The statement said, quote, "We are aware of the difficult situation on the ground. Our local embassy and the German Foreign Office are in an intensive exchange with airlines in order to achieve an increase in the number of flights as soon as possible." The statement comes as a group of exchange students from Dortmund were able to leave Israel via Turkey this afternoon. The 13 students landed safely in Antalya and are expected to arrive in Germany tomorrow morning, according to Martina Plum, a spokesperson for the Youth Exchange Organization, speaking with CNN. Nothing happened to them. The students and their tutors, of course, have experienced a very threatening situation, said Plum. "We are overjoyed that they are safe." The children were very scared because they had witnessed attacks and also spent a night in a bunker, she said, noting their parents were also extremely worried. Most of the students are 16 years of age and were staying with host families in Tel Aviv and Netanya as part of the exchange program. They were scheduled to leave Wednesday, but were relieved to have been able to catch an earlier flight given the flight cancellations, according to the Plum, the spokesperson. This from 15 minutes ago. U.S. President Joe Biden will address the fighting between Israel and Hamas that has continued for the fourth straight day since the Islamist militant group carried out one of the deadliest terror attacks in Israel's history. At least 900 people are dead in Israel. As we know, the IDF radio, the Army radio system for Israel, now puts that death toll at 1,000. They are dead in Israel, according to the IDF. Tel Aviv has responded with an overwhelming number of airstrikes on Gaza, the 140-mile densely populated territory controlled by Hamas. And so that is the very latest as we continue to bring you updates as we wait for President Biden to join us to discuss his conversation with Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. From what we understand, the president will be in the company of Kamala Harris, his vice president, as he addresses the nation, hopefully here in a few minutes or so. We again are waiting, and we still have this beautifully decorated slide from the White House that we have been watching here for some 36 minutes now. And that is, oops, that's the wrong thing. Now you can see that. Here you go. There we go. Took me 3 tries. But that is the slide that we are waiting for. People on the chat room, the current president doesn't step up. If he doesn't step up, he will be voted out. We won't put another Democrat, socialist, communist, Marxist in his place, says Yvonne on the chat room. If you, by the way, have something you would like to share on that chat room, please, by all means, join us. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, X. I normally said Twitter, but we've changed that. Facebook, YouTube, X, Twitch, Patreon, and Rumble. And as I said, we are continuing to wait for the President of the United States to join us as we wait for his comments and what he will consider to be the next steps for the United States of America. And what I'm hoping for is some important news from that. Although I have to be straightforward. I'm not expecting much. My idea of what the president is going to actually bring us is muted by what I've seen him bring in the past. And I am concerned that indeed the president is going to find a way to perhaps avoid any kind of frank United States action on the people of Iran, etc. And we'll see what happens. So as we go through this, we are currently waiting. We decided that we would take this because it was obviously important. It is one of the small moments that the president has given to this war from a standpoint of actually speaking to the people of the United States and the world. He had one 3-minute statement on Saturday. How long this particular statement will be, we don't know. We don't have any idea, but we are expecting him to deliver remarks on the terrorist attacks in Israel imminently. He had just finished a conversation with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and apparently that had carried itself into the time that was originally scheduled for the president to make these remarks. I'm going to check on a couple of other things here to see what I can do about finding out a little bit more about what's happening here. We will join. I'm going to join up with Fox News here, and what we'll do is we'll see what we can't do about finding out what they have involved from a standpoint of their coverage, and we'll do that here in just a couple of moments. But what I wanted to say is we will stick around until the President of the United States does indeed address the nation, something that we expected some 40 minutes ago, and we are waiting. And we thank you very much for waiting with us as we go through this afternoon. It is hard to, and I said this earlier on the broadcast, the Wells Report, which was off the air at 11 o'clock. I was hoping that the people watching this broadcast and watching other broadcasts on this war steel themselves for what you are going to be witness to, at least indirectly, from what comes from this war zone. This is savagery on display, and there's very little else that can be talked about when it comes to this. It is, as I said, pure savagery. And what we are going to find out is going to be remarkably ugly as this continues. And it is my hope, indeed it is my hope, that that the President of the United States essentially gives the, not that he has the opportunity to do so, the sincere go-ahead to the Israeli government to handle themselves as they see fit. It is essential that Israel end Hamas. That is what they need to do. That is my humble opinion. They need to indeed end Hamas as any kind of functioning group of any kind. And if they don't, they're going to continue. All they're going to be doing is waiting for the next attack like this, as opposed to actually stopping these people, because they have proven that they are unwilling to negotiate in any kind of good faith. The Palestinians have proven that all they want to do is kill Israelis, and they seem to be very much and very interested in doing exactly that. And so, that being said, all we can do is wait to see what happens. Let's join Fox News and see what they have available to us as we wait for President Biden to join us with his comments.
And what we're going to do in terms of trying to get hostages out of Gaza. This was all supposed to happen about 42 minutes ago now. We do know that the president and the vice president were on the phone with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So they're probably just making some tweaks to the speech before the president comes out. But we will have that for you when it happens. Meanwhile, Border Patrol data leaked to Fox News reveals thousands of special interest aliens from the Middle East have tried to enter the United States. This comes as war rages on between Israel and the Iranian-backed Hamas terrorist group. Bill Melugin joins us from the southern border. He's got the latest. Bill, how many migrants from the Middle East have been arrested over the past 2 years?
Thousands of them, John, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I can tell you, right after these terror attacks in Israel, I got several texts from Border Patrol agents essentially saying I hope we're not next here in the U.S. because they have extreme concerns about what has been coming across our southern border. We'll start with the terror watch list numbers. Take a look at this graphic here. Fiscal year 2023 so far, 151 people on the FBI's terror watch list have been arrested by Border Patrol as they've been coming across the southern border. That is the highest number ever recorded. It's also higher than the last 6 years combined. Then we'll talk about the known gotaways. Take a look at this video our team has shot in Naco, Arizona. Rare to get these gotaways on camera, but you'll see him in camo just escaping off into the desert. CBP sources telling us that since President Biden took office, there have been well over 1.5 million of these known gotaways escaping into the United States. These are illegal immigrants, may be seen on cameras or sensors, but there's simply no Border Patrol manpower to go out and arrest them. And just to put that in perspective, John, that is a population size bigger than the city of Dallas, Texas, successfully sneaking across our southern border and getting into the United States. Yesterday, Fox's Martha McCallum asked the White House about these security concerns at our southern border given the attacks in Israel. Here's what John Kirby had to say.
I don't have any specific law enforcement actions to speak to today. Obviously, we monitor threats to our national security from inside and outside the country, all in real time. Law enforcement and intelligence community are watching as closely as they can and monitoring.
And then, John, here are those numbers you were talking about. CBP internal data leaked to us by CBP sources this morning show that several thousand special interest aliens have been arrested by Border Patrol at our southern border over the last 2 years. These are people coming from countries designated by the U.S. government to have some sort of nexus to terrorism or favorable conditions for terrorism or a national security threat to the United States. And look at these numbers in these countries. Thousands from Afghanistan, more than 600 from Iran, 160 more than that from Lebanon, the home of Hezbollah, more than 500 from Syria, the home of ISIS, more than 130 from Yemen, home of the Houthi rebels. Former U.S. Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott, he served under both President Trump and President Biden. He says Border Patrol agents have no idea who these people are as they cross. Take a listen.
Having an open border, allowing anybody to come in, is a national security threat. This administration keeps wanting to talk about we're vetting people coming in. That's just simply not true. We have very little information on the people across this entire globe.
And adding more to that point right there about the vetting, Border Patrol agents tell me they have little to no way of vetting these people from these special interest countries. I'm told unless they've previously committed a crime here in the U.S. or they're on some type of federal watch list, they have no way of knowing who these people are or what their histories are. That's because the home countries they're coming from in the Middle East don't share their databases or records or criminal histories with the United States. So when these agents down here run their names or their fingerprints, there's literally nothing to run it against. Extremely concerning, John. We'll send it back to you.
So, Bill, just to get into a little bit of the correspondent statecraft here, anytime that we get things leaked to us, it's because there is concern on the people who leak it that not enough is being done at official levels to address this. What is the level of concern among your sources that all of these people have been coming into the country and the national security threat that they might pose?
The concern has been shooting through the roof for over 2 years now because so many of these agents have been pulled off of frontline patrol duties. They're all frustrated because they're all doing processing and paperwork, and that takes agents off the front lines, and it leaves gaps in our border where sometimes we literally have no agents out there on the front lines, and the cartels and smugglers are able to take advantage of that. And those numbers we just released, the reason they were leaked to us is that is CBP and DHS internal data. They do not report these numbers in these countries to the public. The only way we're able to see it is if we have contacts willing to share it with us. In this case, thankfully, they did do that. We'll send it back to you.
Well, we're certainly not hearing about all of that from the administration, so good to have some sources that are willing to give that information. Bill Melugin for us on the border. Bill, thank you. Sandra?
Yep.
While vicious fighting continues along the southern Israel Gaza border, there are now reports of rocket fire coming from southern Lebanon into northern Israel. This is raising fears that Israel may be forced to fight a two-front war. And joining us now from northern Israel is Eliana Neustadt. She also witnessed the devastation firsthand in Gaza this weekend. You were visiting. You say the house next door to your parents' apartment building was the target, and you were in a bomb shelter when Hamas hit the neighbor. Please tell us about that.
Hello. Yes. So, I mean, while that happened, we were the house next door in the bomb shelter. We ran into the bomb shelter because the alarm started, and we took a selfie for, I don't know, for fun. Usually I don't take it as serious, which is funny now. And I was with my mom, my dad, and my future husband. And when we about to take the selfie, the bomb hit. We thought for a second that it actually hit our house. We wanted to stay inside, didn't know what to do, but then the gas started to smell. And we decided to then go out of the house because we were maybe it was burning upstairs or something was happening. So we ran and we opened the door, and all this, like the sand of the walls and glass and everything was like kind of in the air. So we thought, oh God, maybe it's the fire. So we ran out of the house, went downstairs, panicking neighbors on the stairs, and then we saw that it was the car in front of us. It exploded. We ran back inside of the house. We went upstairs, got our valuables, and left as fast as we could from the location.
Eliana, hi, it's John Roberts in Washington. We've been talking to so many people there in Israel over the last 72 hours, and literally every person that we have talked to knows someone who has died. How has this affected people who live in Israel now? You've been there for about 10 years, I believe.
It's so surreal. I can't even explain how surreal this is. I know my future husband knows 2 people that died. My friend knows a person that died. It's, the party that happened in the South. It's a trance party. We like to go to parties, techno, not trance. But we know it's our kind of people. It's just so horrifying and so horrible. So yeah, honestly, I don't know what to say about that because it's just so close to us, and every day I'm hearing and seeing on Instagram all the videos and what people are sharing, and so many of my friends are posting, they're looking for their cousin. It's really, 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 really horrifying.
And I know that you have said that you've seen bombs fall before, but they were always saved by the Iron Dome. You said there has never been a moment like this. Obviously, this is something you could have never imagined. What are you talking to your family about? How do you plan to pick up the pieces? What is the next steps for you and your family?
So my parents left this morning back to Europe. They wanted, obviously, for me to come with them. My future husband, he voluntarily wants to go with his unit. He wants to recruit himself. So I'm not going to leave him here. I'm honestly, we're not sure what's next. Right now we're up north at friend's house because we don't have a shelter in our own apartment. In our house, we can't go inside right now because they're trying to fix what was broken.
So, Eliana, you are up there in the northern part of Israel, which so far has remained relatively untouched by what's going on further south in Gaza. But every day, there are problems that are coming across the border from Lebanon. And 17 years ago, everything was coming across the border from Lebanon. Today, there was an anti-tank missile that was fired by Hezbollah into northern Israel. The IDF returned fire, took out an observation post. What are your fears that Hezbollah might say, you know what, we have to throw in with Hamas. We need to start firing the thousands upon thousands of rockets that we have toward Israel?
Fears, this is, I don't even know. As you see that I was, so shocked by what was happening to us. I don't even know what to an extent this is what's going to happen. It is so scary. The family of my future husband lives up north. We don't really, I'm sorry for the noise. There's a
no problem.
Air Force base right next to us. I'm honestly, I'm not sure what to tell you. It's pure fear, and
I'm sure. Eliana.
Yeah, we don't know what to expect. This is the most scary thing.
We cannot even imagine the fear that you're living through every moment of every hour right now. We thank you for coming on to talk to us, Eliana.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eliana. You know, Sandra, the one thing that we do know is that the tenacity and an amazing reserve of will that the Israeli people have in the face of these attacks is really something quite staggering. 2006, when the bombs were raining down on Kiryat Shimona, we saw people whose houses had been blown up literally around them. They were in their safe room. And the first thing that they did was they got out and they said, we're going to start cleaning up and we're going to protect the neighborhood and look after people who were hurt. When you live under the threat of missiles and attacks for so long, it becomes part of daily life. You never become inured to it. You just get used to dealing with it. And we can see from Eliana there that you live in fear all the time, but life goes on.
And it's almost like we just saw firsthand that reality still setting in. Here she is about to become a young bride. She was there visiting not just her parents, but her fiance's parents, who were both in the area when all of this happened. And her description of taking that selfie in the bomb shelter, because this is what they do, to have that then become a reality and have that drop on the neighbor's home next door. An incredible story, and our hearts are with her, and we're thinking of her and all those who are in her situation, John.
And there are millions of stories like that across Israel. We are awaiting remarks from President Biden. He was supposed to talk almost an hour ago now. The first briefing by the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, expected to follow the president's remarks. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan will be joining her. This, as we confirm that at least 11 Americans were killed and an unknown number may be being held hostage by Hamas after its brutal attack on Israel. We're watching it live for you. We'll take you there when it happens.
All right.
All right. So we want to thank Fox News for giving us that opportunity to get a little bit more information. That interview with that young woman was riveting. And I have to say that it's so very sad that we live under these circumstances and are watching this unfold. The depravity of the people coming across the Hamas frontier, the Gaza Strip frontier into Israel, and what they've done is definitive, and that is something that is going to leave a great number of people with a completely different understanding of the plight of Palestinians. There was an opportunity up until today, or up until Saturday, when the results of these attacks were being made plain. There was at least some basis for the idea that this was an argument between two groups of people that had different ideas about what should happen with the land that they currently occupy. And you could certainly see that argument would lead to essentially a feud that has gone on for decades and decades, or ever since the state of Israel existed. But after this particular attack, when you see the depravity and savagery involved in attacks against Israeli civilians under the pretext of we did this because Israel has been so mean to us, that changes the entire paradigm, at least for me. And I think that's probably going to be the case moving forward. Now, many people have tried to figure out what the actual motivation was for all of this. And it is my belief that Israel was on the brink and Saudi Arabia was on the brink, along with other people involved in the Abraham Accords, of normalizing relations with Israel, which would have meant that the Palestinians would have been dealt out of the Middle Eastern game from a standpoint of being able to affect policy. And when you've been raised in a circumstance, and the Palestinians have been, remember, it has been 2 generations since the 70s when Palestinian terrorism was, again, the rage that was happening all over the entire world. But, groups like Baader Meinhof in Germany and Black September and even the Weathermen here in the United States, all of these groups were moving to try to ally themselves with the plight of Palestinians who felt very badly done to insofar as Israel was imposed on them by agreements made in Great Britain. So all of this goes back to what I think is something that is not talked about enough. The actual beginnings of all of this occurred in Great Britain after the Second World War. And someone in Great Britain very likely should have spent some time speaking with the Palestinians and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, and worked out some sort of agreement, as opposed to simply saying, okay, you've got Israel, there you go. And people have actually been blaming the Israelis for moving to a country given to them by the world community ever since. And that is something that I have never been able to understand, aside from the fact the only real explanation is that it allows for what caused the entire issue to begin with, which was savage, murderous, genocidal, anti-Jewish bigotry. And to somehow blame the Jews for actually taking people up on a homeland of their own so that they could essentially protect themselves from another Holocaust. To blame them is just an epic absurdity that haunts us to this day and has led to the bloodshed that we are currently watching. You are here on the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report News Special. We are waiting for the President of the United States to make some comments. We are going to take a quick break here, and we'll come back with more coverage as we continue on the Wells Report News Special. Stay where you are.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
This is the Wells Report News Special. Good afternoon. I'm John David Wells. We are waiting for the President of the United States to address the nation regarding the Israel-Hamas war. This was a speech that we were waiting for some hour and 4 minutes ago, as it was scheduled for noon Central Time. We've been keeping our eyes on the breaking news coming out of the war zone. This from 16 minutes ago, courtesy of CNN. We want to thank them very much for sharing this information with us. France says that 8 of their citizens are now confirmed dead. 20 others remain missing following the Hamas attacks against Israel. French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna said today, quote, "I must inform you with immense sadness that we regret the death of 8 compatriots in these Hamas terror attacks, and we've lost contact with 20 French citizens who went missing near Gaza," Colonna said to the Foreign Affairs Committee of the French National Assembly. "Those missing include at least 1 child," said Colonna, "but it is possible several children are among the missing. The numbers are likely to continue to rise." France previously said 4 citizens were dead and 14 missing as Israeli authorities continue to identify victims, according to the French Foreign Ministry. Separately, the French government is in contact with Air France to organize a special flight. This going to happen tomorrow evening to evacuate French citizens who wish to leave Israel, again, according to French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna. And so we are waiting for the President of the United States. As we do this, we have to bring up something else that was incredibly disturbing and very, very disgusting, actually, and that was the Hamas idea that they would begin executions of their hostages on video to share with the rest of the world. Again, I don't know whether there's anybody in charge of these savages, but if they stop the savagery, it'll still be too late. So maybe they feel like they've got nothing left to lose. The only problem with that is that they will completely destroy any kind of good faith ideology that anybody might have for Palestinians if they don't knock this off immediately. Now, I don't know how they would do it. You know, I said that, and I'm going, how in heaven's name, if you're Hamas, how do you back off of this? The answer is you don't. Meanwhile, Fox News is about to interview Tom Cotton, and I'd like to see what Senator Cotton has to say. Let's join the Fox News broadcast in progress.
To avenge the deaths of at least 11 Americans and an unknown number of Americans who are held hostage or at least missing, along with standing beside Israel in their response to this atrocity of unparalleled savagery. And we've seen the reports this morning of babies beheaded, women raped and mutilated, families burned alive. What Israel needs now is total freedom of action to go into Gaza and to destroy Hamas, not just as a terrorist group, but as a governing entity and a social movement. And President Biden needs to make it clear that when that happens, if in 7 or 10 or 14 days we begin to see so-called civilian casualties because Hamas is using civilians as human shields, that he's not going to listen to the calls for the left to demand restraint or proportionality or a ceasefire. Second, we need to hear President Biden express his regret for his Iran policy, which has helped lead us to this point. Iran is the world's worst state sponsor of terrorism. Hamas could not exist on the scale and the brutality it does without the support for Iran. So the president needs to announce that he'll immediately halt the $6 billion transfer to Iran. But he'll immediately begin to enforce sanctions against Iranian oil shipping, which has enriched them to the tune of tens of billions of dollars, and warn Iran directly in no uncertain terms that if they attempt to take advantage of this situation, if they unleash their other proxy, Hezbollah, on Israel, that they will be met with a ferocious American response as well. So the president needs to make it clear what he's going to do to protect Americans, to stand beside Israel for as long as it takes, and to change course on his disastrous Iran policy.
Senator, I wanted to ask you about this. There are reports in Semaphore and Tablet that a high-level Iranian spy ring has been uncovered in Washington, D.C. At the same time, the administration's Iran envoy and the chief negotiator of the JCPOA, Rob Malley, has had his security clearance revoked, or suspended at the very least, as the FBI investigates possible mishandling of classified evidence. Now, at the moment, there is no evidence of any wrongdoing by Malley. But I know that Republicans in Congress, and I would count you among them, are very frustrated about the lack of transparency regarding this issue by the State Department. What can you tell us?
Well, Rob Malley is a notoriously pro-Iran ideologue. In fact, he was kicked off Barack Obama's campaign in 2008 for the contacts he had with Hamas. And Rob Malley is responsible for bringing in this Iranian influence goal to the Biden administration, one of whom, to my knowledge, still sits in the Pentagon as the chief of staff for the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations. Every one of these people should have their security clearance revoked and be removed from any position of power or influence until these allegations can be thoroughly investigated. We cannot risk having Iranian influence operations being conducted inside the United States government at a time that Israel is about to launch a major war against one of Iran's worst proxies in the Middle East. These people should have never been in our government. They certainly shouldn't be in positions of power now.
All right, we're told we've got the shot up now of the White House, the podium where the president is about to address the nation, address the world on next steps and how we are going to prepare to go forward at Israel's side here. Senator, as far as priorities are concerned, will the White House get this right on how we act next?
I don't know, Sandra. There's a tradition going back many years of Democratic presidents demanding restraint and proportionality and ceasefires from Israel when Israel is simply protecting its own people or retaliating for the kind of brutal savagery we've seen. President Biden has to resist that. He has to give Israel the time and the freedom of action it needs. He also has to reverse his disastrous Iran policy. Look, even Jimmy Carter in late 1979, after the Ayatollahs overthrew the Shah in Iran and Russia invaded Afghanistan, changed course. President Biden has to change course after 11 disastrous years of Obama-Biden appeasement and weakness and concessions to the world's worst state sponsor of terrorism, Iran, which is responsible for creating Hamas at the scale and the brutality at which it exists today.
Senator, you spent time in the U.S. military. You know the value of intelligence. People have been talking about the massive intelligence failure that happened here that allowed Hamas terrorists to infiltrate and kill so many people. That intelligence failure extends all the way to this administration, because take a listen to what Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, said about the Middle East just 12 days ago.
We want to depressurize, de-escalate, and ultimately integrate the Middle East region. The war in Yemen is in its 19th month of truce. For now, the Iranian attacks against U.S. forces have stopped. Our presence in Iraq is stable. I emphasize for now because all of that can change. And the Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
The Middle East is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades. I mean, they were caught so flat-footed, it's stunning.
Yeah, John, and it hasn't been quiet even up to Saturday. I mean, we've had more than 80 attacks on American forces in the Middle East by Iran or its proxies, almost none of which have been answered. There's a reason why Iran thought they could get away with supporting Hamas and Hezbollah as they have. Iran has been killing Ukrainians by providing drones and other weapons to Russia. There's been no consequences. In fact, this administration has consistently looked the other way and refused to enforce sanctions against Iranian oil shipments, enriching the Iranian regime to the tune of tens of billions of dollars, putting aside the $6 billion they paid as ransom for American hostages. So for 3 years, really for 11 years under both Barack Obama and Joe Biden, Iran has been emboldened to believe that the United States will not stand up for itself or for our allies in the region. It is absolutely essential that we reverse President Biden's Iran policy and that we take a stand against Iran and all of its proxies everywhere in the firmest possible terms.
Senator, I ask you about priorities because we're left wondering what exactly we are about to hear from this administration, from the president himself. This after White House spokesperson John Kirby came on this network yesterday afternoon with Martha and was asked about the president prioritizing climate change as an existential threat, more so than nuclear war. Listen to this.
Given all the nuclear players in these 2 areas where we are now engaged, John, does the president stand by that comment?
Absolutely, he does. Climate change is an existential threat. It could, it actually threatens and is capable of wiping out all human life on Earth over time. I mean, I don't know how more existential you can get.
Certainly an interesting moment right in the middle of all of this, Senator.
Look, these are not serious people. John Kirby is talking about change at a time when Hamas has cut off the heads of babies in Israel. Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, has said just a couple weeks ago that the Middle East is as quiet as it has been in 20 years. We had 11 Americans killed, even more potentially taken hostage or missing, and we haven't heard publicly from the president in 2 days. This administration is overmatched by events and paralyzed in a crisis. It's why it's so important that President Biden, in these remarks coming up, make it clear that he is going to reverse course. He's going to confront Iran. He's going to take actions like halting the $6 billion payment for American hostages. He's going to enforce sanctions against Iranian oil shipping. He's going to end all financial aid payments towards the Palestinians. And he is going to give Israel a free hand to utterly destroy Hamas inside of Gaza. Anything less will simply embolden Iran and its proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah to the north of Israel.
Senator Tom Cotton of the great state of Arkansas, good to get your thoughts on all of this. We appreciate it as we await the president. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so Fox News doing a great job getting Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas to spend time discussing. He's a very serious dude. He's a guy who served the United States military and is a very deep thinker when it comes to all of these things. And indeed, he absolutely acquitted himself brilliantly in that interview with Fox News. It is certainly my hope that the president indeed does address many of the things that we are seeing here that are being discussed. The idea that anybody can be prescient. For example, they were just talking about Jake Sullivan talking about how quiet the Middle East was. Well, that was 2 weeks ago, and it is the Middle East. Now, as far as the rest of it goes, talking about climate change, as I've said many, many times on this broadcast, if you sit behind one of these microphones and stare into one of these cameras long enough, you are going to say something remarkably, incredibly stupid. It is simply a matter of time. And that might have been Admiral Kirby's moment when he tried to say that indeed climate change was more damaging or dangerous to the entire planet than nuclear war. Admiral, that was a career ender. And not that I wish any of that on him, but all I can say is that was a remarkably stupid statement. You're watching the Wells Report. This is a special news special. It's a special news special from the Department of Redundancy Department. This is a news special from the Wells Report, and we want to thank you very much for joining us. We've been waiting for the president now for an hour and 17 minutes, and the president has been scheduled for at least a day, and the president is arguably way too late for this. The entire world is waiting to hear what President Biden is going to say regarding this war between Hamas and Israel, and that he has not been able to work out the scheduling is unfortunate. The good news is that Fox News moments ago showed us that they have at least turned the camera on in the state dining room of the White House where this address is going to take place. They also showed you, it looked like the White House Situation Room to me, where the president was sitting with Vice President and the Secretary of State, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Antony Blinken, among others, as they discussed what was going on. On the screen at the back of the room was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Charles Q. Brown. He is the general that has taken over for Mark Milley. And so we are, again, waiting for the president to address the nation. We are hoping that he does so at some point very soon and explain to us exactly what is going on. Otherwise, we can also find a little bit of time to find out more We are awaiting, by the way, in case you're wondering, what will be a ground assault into the Gaza Strip by the Israeli Defense Force. We are waiting for that to happen, as it is very likely going to be the next major event as the IDF prosecutes this war. What I'm also very interested in is how they're going to go about the door-to-door infiltration of and inspection of all of those buildings that are left standing as they try to find the hostages, not just from the United States, but from all over the world, held by Hamas terrorists as we come to this conversation. What will they find? What will they do? And Hamas has backed themselves into a corner now. There is no more negotiation possible. When you go into entire villages as an armed force and slaughter everyone you find, including men, women, children, and dogs, you pretty much use up any kind of goodwill that anybody might have for your cause. At this particular moment, considering the conduct of these Hamas fighters, is there anybody that has anything nice to say about Palestinians today? I mean, I'd certainly like to know. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172, but you can't be serious if there's any kind of goodwill left for the Palestinian people. This might be a watershed event for the Palestinians and the Palestinian cause. Nothing lasts forever. Remember, it's been 2 generations that most of us have seen people attempting to negotiate with Palestinians. All of it fruitless. And indeed, what we have now is we have as far as I'm concerned, is the final event of the Palestinian cause, insofar as they simply lost their minds on Saturday and decided to kill as many Israelis as they possibly could. I don't know, maybe believing that it's time to go all in. And all I can say is that if Iran is indeed invested in Hamas and Hezbollah, they probably are sitting here at this particular moment trying to figure out, what did these guys do? They did what? Unless, of course, they're just as far gone as the Palestinians. Now, that is a possibility. We have watched Iran courting their national doom for ever since the Obama administration, the 10 years of the Iran nuclear deal. You know, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, sat there and said that this deal, this idea that somehow you could restrain Iran from a nuclear weapon, which they will surely use on Israel, made Iran the world's first suicide country. So it may be that the savagery that we've seen by Hamas in the last 4 days, it may be that is part and parcel of how Iran expects to treat anybody that they go into conflict with. Okay, well, that is also something that has a very serious price tag, up to and including nobody in the world is going to do business with you because you have turned yourself into a pariah state. And I can't see that there's anything else left, certainly for Hamas, probably for Hezbollah. And unless something changes remarkably, Iran itself. Let's see, there is breaking news from Fox News. Apparently, there have been some tank attacks, as we were just discussing what was going to be next, which was the possibility that the Israeli Defense Force was going to move forward with some very serious ground offensives in their particular pursuit of these Hamas terrorists. We are continuing to wait for the President of the United States. Very likely will be flanked by Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who has not exactly covered himself with glory in the last few days, making statements that are absolutely disqualifying of someone as a Secretary of State. Again, just in my opinion, he has seen fit to do so. We're going to take a quick break here as we continue waiting for the President of the United States. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast. We will return in just a moment.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international.
States has appeared, and we are going to join coverage from the White House press room. Here is the President of the United States.
Is unleashed on this world. The people of Israel lived through one such moment this weekend. The bloody hands of the terrorist organization Hamas, a group whose stated purpose for being is to kill Jews. This was an act of sheer evil. More than 1,000 civilians slaughtered, not just killed, slaughtered in Israel. Among them, at least 14 American citizens killed. Parents butchered, using their bodies to try to protect their children. Stomach-turning reports of babies being killed. Entire families slain. Young people massacred while attending a musical festival to celebrate peace. Women raped, assaulted, paraded as trophies. Families hid their fear for hours and hours, desperately trying to keep their children quiet to avoid drawing attention. And thousands of wounded, alive but carrying with them the bullet holes and the shrapnel wounds and the memory of what they endured. You all know these traumas never go away. There's still so many families desperately waiting to hear the fate of their loved ones, not knowing if they're alive or dead or hostages. Infants in their mother's arms, grandparents in wheelchairs, Holocaust survivors abducted and held hostage. Hostages whom Hamas has now threatened to execute in violation of every code of human morality. It's abhorrent. The brutality of Hamas, these bloodthirstiness brings to mind the worst rampages of ISIS. This is terrorism. But sadly, for the Jewish people, it's not new. This attack has brought to the surface painful memories and the scars left by a millennia of anti-Semitism and genocide of the Jewish people. So in this moment, we must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. And we will make sure Israel has what it needs to take care of its citizens, defend itself, and respond to this attack. There's no justification for terrorism. There's no excuse. Hamas does not stand for the Palestinian people's right to dignity and self-determination. Its stated purpose is the annihilation of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. They use Palestinian civilians as human shields. Hamas offers nothing but terror and bloodshed with no regard to who pays the price. The loss of innocent life is heartbreaking. Like every nation in the world, Israel has the right to respond, indeed has a duty to respond to these vicious attacks. I just got off the phone with a third call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I told him, the United States experience what Israel is experiencing, our response would be swift, decisive, and overwhelming. We also discussed how democracies like Israel and the United States are stronger and more secure when we act according to the rule of law. Terrorists purposely target civilians, kill them. We uphold the laws of war, the law of war. It matters. There's a difference. Today, Americans across the country are praying for all those families that have been ripped apart. A lot of us know how it feels. It leaves a black hole in your chest when you lose family. Feeling like you're being sucked in. The anger, the pain, the sense of hopelessness. This is what they mean by a human tragedy, an atrocity on an appalling scale. We're going to continue to stand united, supporting the people of Israel who are suffering unspeakable losses and opposing the hatred and violence of terrorism. My team has been in near constant communication with our Israeli partners and partners all across the region and the world from the moment this crisis began. We're surging additional military assistance, including ammunition and interceptors, to replenish Iron Dome. We're going to make sure that Israel does not run out of these critical assets to defend its cities and its citizens. My administration has consulted closely with Congress throughout this crisis. And when Congress returns, we're going to ask them to take urgent action to fund the national security requirements of our critical partners. This is not about party or politics. This is about the security of our world, the security of the United States of America. We now know that American citizens are among those being held by Hamas. I've directed my team to share intelligence and deploy additional experts from across the United States government to consult with and advise Israeli counterparts on hostage recovery efforts. Because as president, I have no higher priority than the safety of Americans being held hostage around the world. The United States has also enhanced our military force posture in the region to strengthen our deterrence. The Department of Defense has moved the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group to the Eastern Mediterranean and bolstered our fighter aircraft presence. And we stand ready to move in additional assets as needed. Let me say again, to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. Don't. Our hearts may be broken, but our resolve is clear. Yesterday, I also spoke with the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and UK to discuss the latest developments with our European allies and coordinate our united response. This comes on top of days of steady engagement with partners across the region. We're also taking steps at home. In cities across the United States of America, police departments have stepped up security around centers of Jewish life. The Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Bureau of Investigation are working closely with state and local law enforcement and Jewish community partners to identify and disrupt any domestic threat that could emerge in connection with these horrific attacks. This is a moment for the United States to come together, to grieve with those who are mourning. Let's be real clear. There is no place for hate in America. Not against Jews, not against Muslims, not against anybody. We reject. What we reject is terrorism. We condemn the indiscriminate evil, just as we've always done. That's what America stands for. You know, just over 50 years ago, I was thinking about it this morning, talking to the Secretary of State, the Vice President in my office. Over 50 years ago, as a young senator, I visited Israel for the first time as a newly elected senator. And I had a long, long trip, a meeting with Golda Meir in her office just before the Yom Kippur War. And I guess she could see the consternation on my face as she described what was being faced. They were facing. We walked outside in that sort of hallway outside her office to have some photos. She looked at me all of a sudden and said, "Would you like to have a photograph?" And so I got up and followed her out. We were standing there silent, looking at the press. She could tell, I guess, I was concerned. She leaned over and whispered to me, she said, "Don't worry, Senator Biden. We have a secret weapon here in Israel." My word is what she said. We have no place else to go. We have no place else to go. For 75 years, Israel has stood as the ultimate guarantor of the security of Jewish people around the world. So the atrocities of the past could never happen again. And let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back. We will make sure the Jewish and democratic state of Israel can defend itself today, tomorrow, as we always have. It's as simple as that. These atrocities have been sickening. We're with Israel. Let's make no mistake. Thank you.
Mr. President, what was your reaction?
And so the President of the United States, in a 4 or 5 minute address, essentially said nothing that hasn't been said before. He mentioned that he evoked a Jewish genocide. He said we stand with Israel 2 times. He stated the purpose of Hamas is to kill Jews. This was an atrocity on a human scale, he said. The only thing that had anything to do with regards to the idea of something that will translate into military support was a replenishment of Iron Dome. Also, America stands for rejecting evil. He made no mention of Iran. He made no mention of what sanctions would be taken against Iran should American hostages be harmed any further. He made no mention of what the United States would do regarding American hostages. This is a speech by the President of the United States that is going to be roundly condemned and criticized, at least in my humble opinion, and did absolutely nothing to bolster the idea that America was going to awaken and become a stronger force for this Hamas incursion into Israel. That's the way I see it. We will have more to say, not tomorrow on the Wells Report, but on Thursday morning. The Wells Report will not be seen tomorrow. But all I can tell you is that we'll have plenty to say on Thursday when we see you again. Until then, God bless you and yours. We have brought this special report to you so that you would know what the president would say, and in this case, and I believe more importantly, what the president would not say in a speech to the nation, his first in 3 days. More from this will be heard, as I said, around the entire world of news. And it's not going to be pleasant for the president based on what was a speech that was probably better left unspoken than actually provided to the people of the United States. This has been a news special from the Wells Report, the President of the United States addressing the people of the United States from the state dining room at the White House. I'm John David Wells. God bless you and yours, and we'll see you on Thursday morning for another edition of the Wells Report.